Welcome to another episode of the Embodied Union podcast. I'm Charlie.
And I'm Lindsay.
And today we're going to talk about where we came from, because we're giving you all this cool shit, all this cool information about relationship, but like, who are we to speak about this stuff? Like, why is it even relevant? Who are we? Who are you?
Well,
Awesome, man.
Yeah, because it's like, I think when we're on this journey, it's like it can be a completely solo one and we just do it internally and we do it by ourselves, or we can be in a position of like, why did I help people in the first place? Is this something that I've picked up? And for me, with my background in Olympic weightlifting and in coaching, it's like I had something pop up today where it was me running a workshop 12 years ago in Brisbane. And
Do you mean a memory on Facebook or something?
Yeah. And when it popped up, I was like, that's right. I've been running workshops and doing things like this forever. And it's kind of, I think a lot of people are still surprised. It's like, Lindsay, you ran a CrossFit gym? Or you had a weightlifting club? You coached for Australia? It's like, yeah, I did all those things, but it feels like such a lifetime ago. And like, how does it really correlate? Well, it's like, for me in particular, it was when I was 16, I found out that you could be a personal trainer. And I was like, what? You can get paid to be in the gym? And I got enthralled into that and went down a path of becoming a personal trainer and being in fitness and health and just having a real passion for wanting to support people and help people. And I guess at the time, at my level of awareness, it was physically, and that physical help was, all right, I want to help people lose weight, feel better, those sorts of things, because by them feeling better, I got to feel better and I got to feel good about myself. And, that led all the way down into a CrossFit gym, and then beyond that into weightlifting, and then running a club, and then coaching for Australia. And it's like, how far can I take this? But what I did realize was when I created something called the 360-degree athlete model, one of the parts was mindset. And it really opened up the door for me as far as like, I could write someone an amazing program, but do they have the tenacity? Do they have the courage? Do they have the ability? They might be able to train really well in the gym, but when they go to compete, they fall apart, And it wasn't the program. They would go, oh, the program's got to be better. It's like, mindset needs to be better. You need to be able to deal with your anxiety and your panic and your overwhelm when you get up on stage and compete. And that to me started to become way more insightful. Like once I started doing the physical coaching for numbers of years, it's quite repetitive. People are like, oh, how did you know that was the technique fault that I had? I've seen it 1,000 times. It's not new to me. But in here, that's a deep well, a very, very deep well of information. And, if you're only at the gym for an hour or two a day, there's 22 other hours that this is really governing what's happening with the rest of this as well. So I went down the rabbit hole of personal development, men's work, and now into psychotherapy. And I love it. I absolutely love studying the mind and how it impacts the body, and trying to bring people back to their body and to themselves, their essential selves, or whatever coin or label it is that I really just want people to feel amazing and authentic and embodied, So, yeah.
So when did you decide, I know you work with men quite generally, but when did you kind of niche into the relationship space? Like what took you into men's work coaching to then, all right, relationship coaching specifically?
I think for me it's just around, like any progression, it's a real pain point for men. And I think it's an area, now that I've been running men's groups for a couple of years, it's such a big part of their life. Largely men will come because they're in relationship with somebody else, and it could be in business, or it could be in a relationship, or it could be a family relative or someone that they're interacting with and they're struggling. They don't quite know how to. They haven't been modeled. They haven't been shown how, and they know they have parts of themselves that are playing up, but also the other person is doing things that they don't like and reminds them of old people or people from the past or something else. So for me, it was just like, again, I feel like it's a natural progression of like self-mastery and then the mastery of relationship, you know. And I think that for all of us, in particular with men, there's a tendency to isolate, and there's a tendency to feel disconnected to and disconnected from our touch, from love, from so many areas. And I feel like if I can support men in this area, their lives get to thrive.
I definitely have the belief that all of our suffering is based on relationship dynamics, because it can be the relationship you have with money, or the relationship you have with yourself, or the relationship you have with your parents who might not even be in the picture anymore, like the energy of them, and the relationship you have with partner and work and friends. But like really, it's the relationship you have with yourself. And I think that's the root of all suffering. Like no matter who comes through my door with whatever problem, whatever the hat is that they're wearing, I think you can really go back. It's to do with the relationship that they have with themselves every single time.
Yeah, root cause would be, yep. And I think that's so true. And it's like, I think, and that is why it's so important that we understand ourselves so much in one aspect. Like we talk about this quite a bit, like relationship is the two selves being one, you know, like two people coming together in relationship, and then that is also a dynamic. So trying to decipher the dynamic of a relationship without first having some deep awareness of our own part to play and our own self-responsibility and understanding of self makes it really hard. It's like a shifting sand.
I think this is where like a lot of couples work, or come and work on the relationship, come work on communication, come learn intimacy, come learn about polarity, whatever it is, it falls down because the individual work is what lays the foundation for the relationship dynamic. So yeah, definitely. Like I think we all need to have our individual healing going, and then we can focus on the dynamic that because we're both bringing ourselves and our stuff and our emotional baggage. Like we're bringing our stuff, which creates the dynamic. So you can't really do one without the other.
Totally. We're two peas in a pod on this, I think. So how did you get to this point?
So I have been interested in human behavior for as long as I can remember. Like I remember being obsessed with serial killer movies, and you know those movies like Scream, or like the ones where one's getting killed, it's just a big kill fest. And I remember being really young and crying to my mum that I thought I was going to be a serial killer because I was so into these movies, and I was obsessed with the crime shows. I loved things like SUV and Law and Order, and I just wanted to be a serial killer profiler. Like that was what I wanted to do. I'm going to be a serial killer profiler. I wanted to know why people did fucked up things. I was so fascinated with it. And so my plan from such a young age was to go to uni and do psychology. I was like, that's it, that's me. And then as I got a little bit older, I found yoga and meditation, and that kind of took me away from the darkness of human behavior and made me more interested in, well, how can people thrive? Like I'm still into the crime channel. I'm still into serial killer movies, and like I love it. And what I really enjoy now is supporting people in their strengths, like amplifying their strengths. But it's honestly started from a really young age. And I went to uni. I did psychology. I was in and out of uni when I was young because I was like, I want to party, I want to do this. But eventually, 23, I went back and I went all in, and I did a double degree in psychology and counselling. Turns out I really liked the counselling. It was very much self-development focused. Psychology as a degree,
I haven't heard great things about psychology as a degree.
It is interesting, but it is broad. And being 23, I didn't really investigate like, okay, after this 3-year bachelor, what do I get? Because you are not a psychologist. Like you are not in a position to support anyone based on what you've just learned. 3 years of uni, doing your BA, Bachelor of Arts, you become a really good student. You become really academic. Like you can write a really good essay, but you're still not in a position to sit one-on-one with someone and work with their mental health. So I did that, and then towards the end I realized this is actually just the beginning of the journey if I want to be a psychologist. So I went on and I did my psychology honours, which was, I was vegan at the time, and I decided to do my entire thesis on veganism. It just gave me an excuse to interview a bunch of vegans at vegan cafes. It was a really great experience. And then it was somewhere around the beginning of uni, that's when I'd found yoga as well. And I started my love affair with yoga and mindfulness and meditation. I'd started doing Vipassana, the 10-day silent meditation retreats.
I've always wanted to do that.
They are very dry and profound.
Yes.
But I knew, because it took me 5 years to do my bachelor and then 2 years with my thesis. At the end of that 5 years, I knew I was going to take a break before I did anything else academic and go and get my yoga teacher training. Mm-hmm. That is like, I wanted that so bad. I wanted that more than anything at this point. It was like,
yoga was a big part of your life.
Yoga was huge. It was almost like, I say yoga was my gateway drug into being a healthier human. Before I found yoga, I was a gremlin. I was partying up a storm. I was doing drugs. I was drinking. I was having a really great time. But
You're a great time.
I'm a great time, but just very, like, it was just what we did. And when I found yoga, it was actually the thing that made me want to get out, like not to stay up late during the night, because I wanted to get up at 6 a.m. and practice. So that's the thing that got me away from drinking, because that suddenly became more important. Right. I felt what it felt like, probably for the first time in my whole life, to not be anxious, to be present, to be grounded in my body. And like, remember, I'm studying psychology this whole time, and that's just so heady. I'm still so in my head and academic, and then yoga gave me the experience of like grounded in my body. So it's no wonder that now, all these years later, I've combined all of it.
Yeah.
But that's where I started. I went off and did my yoga training and dove just so deep into like esoteric practices. And then like fast forward to where I am now, I weave it all together. I weave like holistic psychology through like embodiment and somatic work. And I love the journey that I've been on, because I draw on so many different tools. And I think a lot of psychologists, like talk therapy, it's not it.
No.
I've worked, like when I did come back from my travels and like yoga, all of that, I decided to come back into the clinical space, and I was going for my registration as a psychologist. Like, that's what, when I met you, that's where I was at. I'm like, I'm going for it, I'm doing the thing. And I did a year as a provisional psychologist, which is an intern, and I was so disheartened. I was so disappointed. It's like I think it's like the same as like an air hostess. You think it's going to be this fantastical thing, but you're a waitress in the sky. With a psychologist, it's like, yes, I'm diving into human behavior and I'm going to help all these people. You are doing forms and you are doing testing and you are labeling children who just don't want to be in the room, but you're like, it's just, I didn't align with the actual practice of being a registered psychologist. And I did it for a year. And I decided to withdraw. I decided to say goodbye to registration and start my own holistic practice based on what I believe to be more powerful, which is like guiding people into the body. And like not just focusing on like what they're presenting, my anxiety, my ADD or my depression or like whatever it is. It's like, I don't just want to give someone a Band-Aid for that. It's like, let's get to the root cause, which again, like we were saying, it's the relationship they have with themselves. Yes. So how can I help people heal that? And there's so many more modalities than just talk therapy or CBT, or like psychology has a lot to offer.
It sure does.
And there's so much more. Now that I've stepped out of the clinical box, I don't need to abide by any rules, and I can weave through the more alternative practices that I see create the most powerful change.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
And then that's how we sort of got chatting, you know. I was running my men's group, and I really wanted to run something with a woman, and we ended up having a conversation, meeting through the Art of Relating training, and then having discussions around that. And I think we just like really hit it off with wanting to like do something together and collaborate.
Yeah, I think that's like the awesome thing about our relationship. It was really based on collaboration and ideas and how can we weave our magic together. And because we're both so interested in relationship, it's no wonder that our, I suppose, business relationship did transform into what it has become. Like we both realize our values are very in alignment with what we want in relationship. We're both super willing to like work on this stuff. So it's just like, feels like a good match in business and in relationship.
Yeah, definitely. Where else do we cover? What else do we need to cover?
Well, I guess it's just like sometimes I get messages from people. It's like, what are your qualifications? Like, what have you done? And so I think this podcast really speaks into like the experience that we've had. Like it's been lived, it's been through academia, it's still going. Like you're in your 3rd year of Hakomi, you're almost finished.
Yep.
I'm about to start Hakomi training because somatic work is the
best.
medicine, like it really is. So maybe actually it might be good for people to know, like they might know what psychology is. It's talk therapy, right? And there are some there's lots inside of it, but psychotherapy, specifically Hakomi as a modality, maybe we can speak into that a little bit because that's a big part of the work that you offer and I plan to weave through mine.
Yeah, well, I think for me, like what I made sense of, so with my background with S&C, like strength and conditioning, what I always found is people have a misunderstanding of, say, for example, what's weightlifting? Most people think it's lifting weights, but weightlifting is a particular sport of like snatch and clean and jerk. You can go to the Olympics. Most people think weightlifters are powerlifters, and powerlifters is squat, deadlift, and bench press. And then a strong man does completely different things, like the world's strongest man. They're 3 different things, and I think it's the same confusion that people have when they come to see someone like ourselves. It's psychiatrist, psychologist, psychotherapist. And like the way I like to describe it in a really simple way is psychiatry is usually medication.
They can prescribe.
Yeah, they can prescribe.
And diagnose.
And same with psychology. It's like it's more of like the diagnosis. It's more clinical in that sense. Whereas I feel like for psychotherapy, it's more holistic, or it's more like in your life. It's more like some tools and things that you would actually learn to go on and utilize yourself. Do you have a different way that you kind of describe it to people?
Yeah, I also like having my experience in like a clinical psychologist's office. Psychotherapy is so different. Like I think both can provide tools, but with psychotherapy, it's an experience of helping people to access what's going on in their body rather than just talking to them in loops around like your trauma or your background or your childhood. It's like that can be supportive. It brings about a lot of awareness, but psychotherapy is like a doorway into just accessing our deeper core material so we can actually heal it. In a psychologist's office, the level of talking stays up here, like at the level of the conscious mind.
Right.
Whereas psychotherapy gives us access to like the unconscious parts of ourselves, which now what I have learned is that's where you actually need to go for transformation and healing.
Yes.
So
what's 90%?
Yes, it's like we think we are our mind, our conscious thoughts, but that's the tip of the iceberg. Like we are being dictated by patterns and programs and conditioning that is underneath the surface of the water. 90% are unconscious material, and psychotherapy is a way to access that. So I just find it so much more powerful, and I still combine like the skills I learned at uni and in psychology, but now I have tools to really help people create change, not just talk about it, not just give them a band-aid. It's like we can shift something deeper.
Because I'm noticing that in the last couple of months, there's been some big podcasts and people talking about like therapy's not helpful. And it really like concerns me because it has people go, oh, I tried it and it didn't work. Well, what type did you try? Were you just labeled? Did you just talk? Did you do any somatic work? Did you do any exercise or change work? Or did you go into your sleep patterns? Did you go into old beliefs that are like unconscious? Like, also in your subconscious, it's like, yeah, I'm really sitting with that at the moment as a concern for people, because it's like people will finally, like I think about men that finally reach out to somebody and they go somewhere and they have a shit experience.
Yes.
Like a not good experience of therapy at all.
Yes.
And then they're like, well, I'm writing that off forever. And I think, oh no, like, you know, they then go on to just stay stuck and stay in it. Or I talk to people that have had the same therapist for 10 years. It's like, I don't want to have someone for 10 years. I don't want to, like, I want to support people in a way that they don't need me anymore. you know, or maybe they just contact every now and then where it's a touch base or it's a, this thing's happened and can we work on it? But it's like not creating a codependent relationship with a therapist either, you know, because I wonder with some versions of therapy, it's almost like, and I think of this like chiropractic, it's like, well, it's 2 sessions a week and it's forever. You know, it's like, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that therapist.
Yes.
You know?
I think that can be the trap as well. I've spoken to many women. It's just like, yeah, I've been seeing the same guy or same woman for 10 years. It's like, what's not landing?
Yeah.
Like, it's a level of codependency. I just totally agree with that.
And that's another relationship, you know?
Exactly.
And this is what we also need, you know, in the work that I do with men, it's kind of like, and we talk about this in Hakomi, which is like there's a jute, it's called jumping out of the system. So we realize or recognize we're in a system, and then we need to go, right, well, we're in the client relationship, therapist relationship system, and it's like, this is working or not working, you know, to step out. It's the same in relationship. It's like, babe, we're in a loop. This is the same thing. Am I playing a part in this? Am I a character in your system? Or is this my system playing out? Or like whatever it is. And like knowing for us, it's like, we have a therapist. Like I have a supervision person for my psychotherapy practice.
We were in therapy yesterday.
Exactly. It's like, this stuff's
Therapy is amazing.
Absolutely. You know, and we're not therapizing each other, you know, because I think that's also the trap when personal development starts to become really big in a relationship. It's like, or pop psychology, it's like, it's your trauma that's doing that.
You narcissist, you are gaslighting me. It's like, do you even know what that means? I think so. It's just, as much knowledge as we can have as individuals, we can't therapize each other. Like having a third set of eyes, having someone who, therapy is not for broken people. It is for people who want to thrive, who want to learn new skills, who really want to resolve the conflict they have within themselves. And psychotherapy is the medicine.
It's pretty damn good. And I like that I like where it's going because there's a lot of new science that's coming out that's backing it. I'd love to see psychotherapy in the future be able to be through HICAS. So you can, you know, through Medicare, those sorts of things, so people can claim it, can get 10 sessions.
Make it more accessible.
Yeah, because what I also see is a lot of people go, oh, I'm going to get a healthcare plan, and it's 10 sessions or 6 sessions or whatever it is, but it's 10 sessions of talk therapy.
Or CBT or something like that.
Where it's like,
which again can be helpful.
Yeah.
It can be helpful, especially when we're working with people who are really in their head. You know, like for many of us, we're conditioned to be up in our thinking brain all the time. So they're just trying to drop someone straight into their body. It's like that kind of therapy can also be the gateway into deeper work because it gives them to stay in the head and talk. It's a bit safer. It's known, you know, and it does still breed a level of self-awareness, which I think is still the foundation that is necessary to do deeper, more psychotherapeutic work and somatic work, body-based work, and that same level of self-awareness is what is the foundation for an epic relationship.
Totally. And I think, because I came off topic a little bit, but coming back to like how do we work and how do we deepen ourselves and the somatic work, like with me, with my psychotherapy, and what I've learned is like, for an example, when you're saying that, it's like there's 4 minds. There's the head, the heart, the gut, and the balls for men, because I work predominantly with men. So it's like understanding that if I have these 4 brains, am I just using this one?
Your head.
Yeah, or can I go down into my heart? Can I use my gut? My gut's like my intuition. My balls is like my warrior, like my drive, my wanting to penetrate the world, or, you know, be a great lover and all those things. It's, I can sort of see what's happening here down into my body. Can I create sensitivity? Like, do I have sensitivity in my body? I think a big piece for men is we stop being touched at such a young age in the family. You know, like our mum is pretty much the only one that touches us or hugs us. Our fathers stop touching us and hugging us and kissing us younger than, say, their daughters. You know, so men grow up starved, touched, really lacking connection with people other than just their significant other, maybe their children. It's very difficult. It feels isolating. So it's like helping men get back into their body and realizing that their body has so much wisdom, so much of what you want to know about yourself is just sitting in there waiting to come out, you know, and I think that's such an important piece for men to learn. And it's a big gap from being just like a normal everyday guy to coming in and working with me. That's kind of why I've created some of the programs that I have, is to sort of try and bridge this gap from like, I'm not a bead wearing hippie kind of woo guy, but I'm like the gateway to understanding the body in a more psychotherapy grounded masculine way that's not too esoteric.
Yeah, I think you fill an awesome gap.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're a gift. I think I'd love to just share the experience I had yesterday around how psychotherapy and somatic work, exactly what you're saying, right? Because our wisdom is in the body, as is our reactivity, you know? So if we feel like we're triggered, we think it's at the level of our head. It's just like we have all these thoughts spiraling and looping, like we're creating more of like a heady problem, and we think we need to talk about it or fix it. We think the issue is up here. But for example, yesterday we had a somatic psychotherapy session with our therapist because I had some reactivity coming up, and our therapist, he put me into my body and he kept me there in the most uncomfortable feeling that normally what I would want to do is go to my partner and have them soothe me, fix me, or I go into a collapse and I kind of shut away from it, you know, instead of just actually going into the center of my suffering and reactivity and finding the tools to self-regulate through it. And once I'd come out of this session, it was like the weight of the world had been lifted off my shoulders because I'd actually tended to my reactivity at the level of my body rather than just thought about it. Like an emotion will pass through us in 90 seconds if we actually feel it. But if we go up into our head and think about it, we're perpetuating our suffering. So I think it's so beautiful that you're giving men this experience that otherwise they might not touch these parts of themselves. And it's the same for women. I guess lots of women, and this was me, they come to do therapy and they have just been in their head for 30, 40, 50 years. And it's like, there's actually another way of being. There's another way of being with that problem you're telling me about that actually lets it release and you can let it go. So that, I just feel like that's really like, I know we're both such huge advocates for this work. And if anyone has had a bad experience with therapy, I'd love for you to lean back in.
Yeah.
Because it can be...
Tell us about it.
Yeah, let us know. It can be transformational. I know it transforms my life and continues to.
Yeah. Same, likewise, you know, my experience of finding men's work was profound enough and then really wanting to deepen the work of men's work and moving into psychotherapy has been so nourishing for me and so beautiful that it gives me something that I can continue to sink my teeth into and do it in a relationship, in a business together, on a podcast together, you know, and then weekly bring it to the men in men's group or to the men that want to have a program and learn this stuff deeper so they can take it and go and use it with their men in their communities.
Yes.
You know, like I'm such a big advocate of sharing the knowledge and sharing that, as I have for nearly 2 decades now of coaching and supporting people. It's just the best.
It is. So I think if anyone was wondering who we are, what we do, why we do it, where we come from, what our background is, that kind of covers it.
Yeah.
If you do have questions, you can always reach out. Lindsay works with men, I work with women. Together we work with couples. So we've got all the bases covered.
Yes.
So if you want to go deep, you can find us at Embodied Union, Instagram, the podcast. And I guess anything else to add?
That's it for this week.
Thank you for joining. Thank you for your presence and big love.
Love you, Greta.